Welcome to another episode of Preparing for the Unexpected. I'm your host, Alex Fullick, and as always, we like to talk about things related to resilience, crisis management, business continuity, disaster planning, anything that helps you, your organization, or your community prepare for, respond to, and overcome adverse situations. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, please feel free. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am the only Alex Fullick there. I'm really easy to find, and I do respond to everything I get. Today, we're going to be talking about CEOs and crises. And I'd like to welcome to the show one of the authors of the book, Leaders Under Fire, Jeff Chatterton. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And congratulations on the book, by the way.
Thank you. It was a bestseller in like something like 14 countries, but unfortunately, it came out about a week before the pandemic. So the wrong type of crisis.
Well, we also have to shout out your co-author, Conway Fraser.
Fantastic,
Shout out to
Conway, long
Conway. I know he
time,
couldn't be with us today, so.
yeah, long time CBC investigative journalist, Genie Award winning CBC journalist, and he's a pain in the butt, but everything that every word that's in there is what two seasoned crisis veterans ardently believe in.
And we're going to get to that because I've got some interesting questions for you. It is a great book and it is an interesting read. Now, you and I have gone back and forth. We even met recently at the Continuity Resilience Today conference in Toronto, even though briefly I was on my way to catch a flight to London, but we did get to meet in person. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and how you got into what you do?
So I call myself a crisis communicate. I call myself a high stakes communications specialist, whether that's crisis communications or risk communications. I'm the guy that you typically don't necessarily want to see walking into the office, but I help calm upset stakeholders and build trust and really help my clients fall up. It's taking the really awful and awkward and ugly things that every company is inevitably going to deal with, and I help my clients tell the truth in order to end the negative headlines and avoid the negative publicity, but more importantly, to use it as a factor to grow in integrity, to grow in credibility, ultimately to grow in profitability. And
Mhm.
we've had some really awesome, fun success stories from companies all over the globe that have had some really awful things happen to them, but have turned it into massive wins. So I've been really blessed to have that opportunity.
Hopefully, we'll find out who a few of those are later on in our show, those success stories, or some of those oh, we're stuck in hell stories. Now, let's talk about the book. It's written differently. You tend to focus on two fictional CEOs. I'm assuming they're fictional. Uh,
Raj and Bill
Raj
are
and Bill.
fictional. Yes.
Yeah. Why did you write the book that way and tell their stories rather than the way most other authors write, where they say, this is what you need to do, blah, blah, blah? You went a different route. How did that come
We
about?
wanted to tell stories. This is a book about stories, stories about leaders, and stories about leaders who are facing tough times, stories about leaders under fire. And the art of storytelling is a human skill that goes back thousands of years. It's how we know about what the Greek gods were doing back, thousands of years BC, because of stories. And I could sit here with charts and graphs and data and numbers, and I have the charts and the graphs and the science to talk about risk communications and science-based communications and all of that sort of stuff. But frankly, no one cares. I mean, if they care, but they don't grab onto it emotionally. And I wanted the reader to actually feel it. I wanted them to go, "Oh, geez, that could be me. This has happened to me. I had a similar situation like that. I had a buddy that had that happen to me, or I had something really similar happen to me like that." And the best way to do that is by telling stories.
It makes it more relatable, right? To
100%.
which seems funny because when you talk about crises, and crisis management or crisis communications, getting their names, as you put it, out of the headlines, I should say, it sometimes people just can't relate to that because all they want to hear are certain things or things like that. So it makes it really interesting to actually tell stories, which you do in here. And some of them really are good, some of them are bad, and some of them are downright ugly.
Yeah, yeah. And I will say, I mean, some of the stories obviously you're going to recognize. Some of them we've quite openly we advertise that we've changed names and locations and dates, but they're they're true stories. They're situations that Conway or I have been in and dealt with and faced and faced well, or at least I'd like to think so.
Now, you talk about controlling the narrative. Why is
Mhm.
that important? And what are we talking about when we say the narrative?
So something bad happens to you. And typically there's really only three things that are gonna be a problem for a particular company. That's why I think most crisis communication consultants over stress and get into, oh, these scenarios in this situation and this situation. At the end of the day, there's three. There's um, threat to self. Is my building on fire? If I eat the hot dogs at this arena, will I get sick? Um,
Probably yes.
yeah, yeah, probably. Yeah, yes, yes, you will. If I take the Tylenol, am I going to die? These are famous crisis communication stories that we're all familiar with. And then there's threat to wallet. My website has been hacked, and I need to tell all of my customers that their credit card information is at risk, or that their identity may have been stolen, or that um, we need to reduce our dividends because our corporate vice presidents embezzled a ton of money. Whatever the particular situation is. But the third, and the one that's by far and away the most common and the most pervasive, but no one prepares for it. And I mean, obviously some prepare for it, but as speaking in generalities, threat to feelings,
Hmm.
especially now. People are upset. It doesn't matter whether it's, I mean, take a look at the last 5 years. Um, we don't like the way you handled the pandemic. We don't like the way you handled Black Lives Matter. We don't like the way you handled Roe v. Wade. We don't like the way you handled the transgender issue. We don't like the way you handled the diversity issue. We don't like the way you handled the environmental issue. Those are feelings issues, and they're awkward and they're ugly and they're sticky. And
So how do you
sorry,
go about dealing with that then? Because if that's the one that many organizations, I'm hesitant to say ignore, but maybe aren't aware of, shall we say?
it's hard to practice for.
Yeah.
It's
How do you
hard to
go about it?
practice for what happens when we piss off half of our customers.
Mhm.
It's hard to visualize. It's hard to think about those sorts of things. I mean, did we really think we'd be in this particular? No, of course not. But that's the nature of crisis. But the at the end of the day, there's a recipe, and it's like any good recipe. You have to follow the steps. And this is where I get into the science and the data and the stuff. But at the end, like, I'm not a baker, but I'll give the example. The analogy I use is I'm not a baker, but even I can make a birthday cake. I go to the store, I buy the box of cake mix. I'm gonna get this wrong, so don't roast me in the comments. But you add one egg, you put in a quarter cup of oil, 1 cup of water, you mix it all together, put it in the oven at 350 degrees for 20 minutes. Out comes birthday cake. Now, if you do this that's following the recipe. You do this in the wrong order. Um, you add the stuff, and then you realize after you've baked it that you forgot the egg, so you add the egg on top. It's not going to work. If you get, 1 cup of oil and a quarter cup of water instead of the other way around and put that into the thing and you put that in the oven, you're not going to have birthday cake, you're going to have goop. So what I find way more effective than wargaming every scenario that's out there or preparing a static, old school written crisis communication plan that's probably going to sit on some mid-level manager's filing cabinet somewhere that you probably paid a guy like me 20 grand to put together and thus ignored. What makes far more sense from a dollars and cents perspective is training the spokespeople the recipe, teaching them these are the steps you need to follow in order to calm people down. There's some science there that it's not hard to do, it's hard to do right.
Why is it so difficult to do right?
It's
If
it's
Because we're
counterintuitive.
having a natural conversation now. So
Yep.
why is it when something goes wrong, suddenly that natural conversation seems to go out the window?
Because right now we're in what I call a green light environment. A green light environment, I can get away with doing most of the talking. I can make jokes. I can even say references like pissed off. I can make the odd little inappropriate innuendo and reference, and you just kind of shrug it off and move on. In a high stakes, if I'm the spokesperson and I've really upset you and you are out for blood, you want answers and you want answers now. Yeah, yeah, I can't get away with that. It's what I call red light communications. And it's not something that 99% of the communications world ever practices. Um, Conway and I, we used to joke, there's a lot of folks out there who claim they have crisis experience. There's a lot of people out there who claim that they know how to box because once a week they put on boxing gloves and they go and they spar as part of a workout class at the gym. Conway and I bare knuckle box every day and we like it. And that makes us either mentally deranged or really, really good at it, right? There's a recipe, there's a formula. Every situation is a little bit different, and it's knowing when to follow the formula, when to come off the formula, when to do it. But yeah, you have to know the data, you have to know the science, you have to know what it is you're up to.
What about, let's take an early break because I'd like to hear what your formula is.
Sure.
And we'd only have like 2 minutes to go through that. So I want to end this segment a little bit early, and let's start the next segment with what is that recipe? What is that formula that hopefully will work in, let's say, the majority of situations?
Sure.
Okay, we're talking with Jeff Chatterton today, co-author of Leaders Under Fire, and we will be right back. If you like that video, thumbs up. If you didn't like that video, thumbs down. But leave me a message and let me know your thoughts. Of course, don't forget to subscribe. And in the meantime, stay prepared, everybody.